Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and also a friend of my brother Mel and ODAAT. I served 34 years in the Pennsylvania prison system when I was convicted back in 1978, a victim of the streets. I used to run the streets down on 17th and Cumberland like a few of us have. I remember Top Dollar and Rap and, all of them, Marshall, all of them, right? But I originally lived at 25th and Allegheny. Unfortunately, I graduated to organized crime, and without going into any details, that sent me to prison. So I served 34 years. During my incarceration, 30 of those years, I continued to study the teachings of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and I was successful with reestablishing the Nation of Islam in the prison system, because prior to 1975, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when he was among us, after he left, the Nation of Islam was changed over to the World Community of Al Islam. To make a long story short, I was instrumental in helping the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan reestablish the Nation of Islam services, the right to worship and study classes in the Pennsylvania prison system. And I first started in 1981. Okay, so during my incarceration, I also was involved in inmate social organizations. I helped establish an organization called the RBO at SCI Mahano in Fratville, Pennsylvania, called the Resident Betterment Committee. I was also the chairman of the religious committee of the prison chapter of the NAACP, coordinated out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I have a lot of work that I accomplished in the prisons. So after getting released, I brought this energy out here. I am currently Minister Farrakhan's student regional prison reform minister for the Delaware Valley. What my focus is, my main focus right now, of course, is receiving our incarcerated family as they come out, and establishing a transition house in which we could house them. So I will leave it right there.
Wow, well, I appreciate that. Wow, you've got a lengthy life, and it sounds like you're doing some great work. And so I want to thank you again for joining us today. Why don't we move to Chris Kennedy? Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're putting your current energy in?
So,
Good
Chris.
fellas. First, I want to say my condolences to my brother Oskino lost his son. Long ago. The first time I actually got to talk to him, I ain't talked to this dude in years, so it would only be right that I basically speak to my brother. If you'd actually have told me or him that we'd be right here, coming from where we come from, because I think we probably the youngest probably at besides John. I don't think we'd be telling you, we'd be sitting here talking to you guys about pushing these communities forward. So, just real brief from my background. Gregory Muhammad, man, I'm very familiar with the brothers that come from your era. I know the stories. If you want to talk it from the first resurrection on up, I mean, a lot of those guys, we was able to, get some of their teachings in the streets, if I shall say. But also going to prison and serving 7 years for mistaken identity, as well as being on state parole for 13 years as a result of that mistaken identity. You know what I mean? So it was something I never really talked about because I wanted to get out of that whole process of parole and the system, and then build myself up. Then the story would be more received. Now, if we looking at currently where I'm at today, getting worldwide recognition from starring in some of these films, and basically doing my thing with some of the biggest, the baddest, if you want to call it, the top comedians. Probably not the Kevin Hart's, Eddie Murphy, but certainly the rest of them. And I'm right now looking at this platform, and along with Matt Wells and very much Ostino, because that's my childhood brother. And just coming from where we come from to pull off what we pulled off. We ain't. They may not really actually look at it now, but looking in the perspective of what me and Oskino pulled off, coming from where we coming from, you know what I mean? Not no moms, no dads. They're straight juvenile delinquents. Whatever we laid our head was our home. however we got to eat, whether it was breaking in your stores, whether it was stealing your cars, just trying to survive. You know what I mean? So we represent a lost nation, you know what I mean, our age bracket in terms of me and Oskino, but for him to go on and get recognition worldwide by some of these guys that, you know, the big names, you know what I mean? This would never to be pulled off in our lifetime, coming up where we come from. The influence that we got right now with me and him, just in a minute of seconds, us reaching hundreds of thousands of millions of people says a lot about the work that we put in. So now it's just like, for me, I'm trying to find a balance on how do we begin to try to combat some of this gun violence, you know what I'm saying, realistically, because you know it's a thin line when you're talking in terms of streets and the community politics. We know there's a real thin line that we can't travel, so that we can't touch on. And I'm really not willing to touch on it, but I'm willing to stand up and say what's wrong. You understand what I'm saying? What I'm more so concerned is actually catching these younger kids, real young, a young adulthood, man, and get them adjusted to society. I know a lot of times we look at a lot of guys coming from prison and things like that, and we glorify a lot of people in our culture that may not be good for our culture. You understand what I'm saying? But as we know psychologically, this war and this slavery that go in our mind keeps this thing perpetuated. So I want to look at trying to start building these younger men up and not so they won't fall in some of these places. You know what I mean? That led a lot of us in penitentiary stories. I'm tired of. That shouldn't be a young black male or a young black brown kid. That shouldn't be his story. Should be his story. You feel what I'm saying? So I just want to see what we find ground realistic ground. Rather us holding some of the people that's representatives in these neighborhoods accountable. Rather it's some of these people that's profiting off of people. So it goes it's deep. I don't want to get too far into it, but when I say realistically, I don't want to have conversations that we can't really see the groundwork as we go along in the next couple of weeks or days. But not just here, but in life. If you're saying we're gonna fix this playground, let's build this playground, or let's touch these houses, let's do it. I ain't the guy that really, so that's just me, guys, in a nutshell.
Well, it's never been done. So know that. But we can start. How about that? Well, I appreciate you being a part of it, especially all the things that you've accomplished. And I'm so glad that you're enthusiastic to be with us today, but also to put our hands to the plow and get to work. Darnell Scott, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and where you're putting your energy and effort today? You're muted, Darnell. You're muted. If you can unmute yourself.
Oh, hold up.
There you go.
Y'all can hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear.
How y'all doing, guys? My name is Darnell Scott, and I got roughly about 25 years in the prison system from juvenile to now. Mostly my energy is going into trying to save the youth and the young men from making the mistakes that I made by trying to reverse the ripple effect that I caused. And in reality, I know I can't take away the things that I've done, but I can throw the rocks in a pond in a positive way to try to cause a positive ripple effect now instead of a negative one. And I'm also trying to get the older guys to stop encouraging these younger guys to do what they did. Let them make their own mistakes. Don't encourage them to sell drugs. Don't encourage them to carry a gun. Let them make their own choices and their own mistakes. A lot of these older guys, which happened to me, encouraged me to do things that they was doing that they already failed in. So that's a big thing that I need to really put a check mark on. I got to get these older guys to stop encouraging these younger guys or making them think that they're soft if they don't shoot somebody or they kill somebody. Like, they got to let these guys live life.
Come on, Darnell. I appreciate that, man. And like I said, we all come from a whole different perspective. And the beauty of that is that when we do engage, we become way more powerful and influential. But that next generation that's coming up, boy, they get the best of what we've learned. John, why don't you introduce yourself again, just and tell us where you're putting your energy and effort right now. I don't know if everyone.
John, tell them about the contract too, because maybe we all can soldier up and take your contract and get people to sign this contract. Go ahead, bro.
You're muted, John.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah.
So my name is John Solomon. I grew up in North Philadelphia. I'm 28 years old. 24th in Somerset to be exact. And, just like a lot of other young guys in the city, we grew up around gun violence and drug dealing and seeing all these people or men in our community that had influence involved in this criminal lifestyle. So of course, growing up, we kind of don't know better. I didn't have a male figure in my life, so I had to learn things through trial and error. So I'm about age 13 years old. I found myself involved in gun violence in my neighborhood. 15 years old, I was shot as a result of it. 17, was arrested for a firearm charge. Spent about 10 months of placement. I graduated that year. Came home 3 months later. Was arrested for another firearm in a shooting. And I was arrested on the scene and spent almost 5 years in prison. During my incarceration, obviously, I had a change of mind on what I wanted in life. And I began this journey of developing myself and educating myself in prison and surrounding myself around the right people. And just doing a lot of reading just to prepare myself to go home and stay home. I came home back in 2015, around July. And I immediately got involved in my community about probably 6 months down the line. And then I went on to found an organization called Endangered Kind 2016, which is it's violence prevention based. We're a mobile advocacy group aimed at shifting the narrative of gun violence in the city. I work with a lot of guys that are involved in gun violence. Like,
you can try and assist well. So,
sorry.
Put yourself on mute, Senator, real quick. We're gonna finish up with John, Senator, and I believe that Chip will keep passing it over. Got you, Senator.
I didn't realize I wasn't.
That's what we do. It's a family discussion. Go ahead, nephew.
Yeah. So I work around these young guys in the city that are directly involved in gun violence, only because I have the background to be able to get in front of these guys. So I built a lot of relationships with them. A lot of them like friends to me. And because of my age, I have a little advantage than most. So I do a lot of work throughout the city, just connected with them and trying to see how I can help them and plug them into the right resources. And as of recently, I started a campaign. I launched a campaign on February 1st called Stand on Business. Our goal is really to have these conversations, have these dialogues with these individuals in the community that got influenced, specifically those that are involved in gun violence, to raise their awareness of the influence that they have and for them to be more conscious of their choices. Because in many cases, I'm not sure if many of you have been involved in the streets, but when you're involved in the streets, it's not as simple as putting your gun down and stopping the violence when somebody is still trying to take your life, even though you want to move forward. So this Stand on Business campaign is really aimed to really have these conversations and dialogue that begin to establish some type of rules and regulations and boundaries, because there are many innocent people, innocent bystanders, women, older people, kids being shot and killed throughout the city. And a lot of it is because nobody's really having conversations with them. And this Stand on Business campaign is geared towards creating those conversations with them and getting in the room with those guys and really talking to them. And we have what we call pledge statements, and we get individuals that we do talk to sign them so they can make that commitment and do something productive for the community. So that's kind of like a little bit about myself.
Come on, John. Hey, man, I so appreciate you being here, not just because of the great work you're doing, but because of your age. 28 years old, man, you've got great wisdom, you've got great foresight, and you are giving yourself to a worthy cause in changing the environment around you, man. And I'm proud to be in this discussion with you today. And I just go, man, you are holding a banner that many find it very difficult, not until their latter years, to understand. And you're blessed to have that understanding now. And I'm honored to be in this discussion with you today, man. So thank you. And you keep
let me add on to tell you, John. Mel will tell you, when I'm listening to you, you remind me of when I first started dealing with Mel 15 years ago. So I see me and you all over again. I know your whole story. I watched you young dudes in the state penitentiary grow up to be men. I mean, kids, 13, 14, in the state penitentiary. So you in the right hands, man. You in the right hands. You know what I mean?
Come on.
Yeah.
If we can, as we keep going along before we see the Senator John want to commit to us, all the men on this screen, we'll sign on to the pledge campaign, because we need to be signing on to exactly what you're handing out there in the community so we can back up to what you're saying as well. So thank you, John, for that one. Go ahead, Chuck.
Awesome. Well, Senator Street, welcome. We're just doing a brief introduction. We're so glad that you've joined us. We always see you there in the streets, and it's great to have you here. So if you can go ahead and just introduce yourself and let us know what you're working on right now.
Well, look, I'm right now I'm actually in virtual session. So in a minute I may have to go into an appropriations meeting. But look, some of the things we're dealing with, what I'm working on right now is we've got too many of our families dying from COVID, and so we've got to move out some relief to help them. We need to make sure that vaccines get distributed equally. And we need to make sure some of our small businesses, and including churches and nonprofits that are hurting, are able to move forward. We're also got to make sure that there's fairness on our criminal justice system so that when people come home, they have a fair shot. And we need to be able to make sure that we deal with some of this gun violence and people dying in the streets, and not just locking people up, but actually figuring out how do we deal with the systemic causes of gun violence? How do we deal with what they call the social determinants of gun violence? And there's health. And we got to get our schools back open. Our kids aren't been in school for over a year. That's having an effect on gun violence. That's having an effect on what's happening in the community, particularly for teenagers who are sitting out there and they don't have any outlets, and we've removed the positive outlets for them. Those are issues that are affecting the community every day. And what about the young kids, young boys, young girls that don't have an opportunity to get engaged in a viable educational process? That has the fact that we have food insecurity, people going home hungry. We use big words, food insecurity. That means people are going home hungry, and everybody knows in the hood that hungry people will do things to feed themselves. And so we need to recognize that when we address food insecurity, making sure people aren't struggling to eat, that has an effect on it. And so there are a lot of systemic things that give rise to violence. But guess what? Locking up everybody and not giving people a chance to come back doesn't make things better. Look, I got to jump into an appropriations hearing now. I'm going to be back. I'm not signing off. I'm just going to turn off my camera, but I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to sign back in.
Thank you, Senator. We know you're busy. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last one, Osino, if you could introduce yourself and tell us where you're putting your energy and efforts right now. Welcome back. I know you got cut off for a little bit.
What's up, everybody? I had some technical difficulties. Well, what's up, Mel? What's up, everybody? Man, Chris, we grew up together, so down North Philly. So our stories is basically like everybody else's story. It's just that the outcome was a little different. I was in foster care, 3 foster homes, juvenile placements, certified as an adult at 16, shot 9 times at 18, locked up for homicides. And I had the whole tour. I went to Dallas, Camp Hill, Greater Ford, House of Corrections, CF, Fulton County, juvenile placements, Vision Quest, St. Gabe, Slayton Farm. I've been everywhere. So basically, as growing up, I just felt like I wasn't never gonna be nothing. I had no aspirations to really be nothing. I wanted to be something, but I didn't think it was possible. Put it that way. Cause I remember, man, Chris, we was a dance group. Remember, Chris? We used to be doing talent shows and stuff. Like we wanted to be something, but we didn't know what route to take. Then I got shot up when I was 18. I got shot up real bad. I couldn't really walk too good. I couldn't. My left arm didn't work, so I was going through a lot. But then I just buckled down, and then I started doing music. And I turned 21. I got signed by Jay-Z, the Rockefeller. And it was like a miracle type of thing. But it's something that I said I was going to do. And I did it. But my whole thing right now was that I have a son locked up for a homicide. I just lost a son a few months ago. And you could tell your sons don't do this. You could tell your sons don't do that, but they do what they see you do. So they don't really listen to what you tell them. They look at what you do. And I didn't know that. I don't have a father. So I thought as long as I'm buying you clothes and feeding you and giving you love, you're not gonna be like me, but they be just like you when they see what you're doing. I mean, so I feel responsible kind of for for my sons that's in prison and stuff like that. I mean, even though I was there, I was showing them too much. And I was doing too much because I didn't know better. I mean, so and a lot of times you can't talk to your kids how you can talk to a stranger. Your kids don't see you as the same as a stranger would. You know what I mean? So my thing is, I just don't want kids to feel this pain that I know a lot of people feel. Being in prison and not having nobody. We act hard, but it really be hurting us. I mean, it be hurting us. So I mean, especially when you go to them old prisons like Dallas and stuff like that, you get to talk to people that have been in prison before you was born. I mean, that when you come to work, I was a barber up there, so when I come to work, I had a OG named Blue, been in jail before I was born. If I don't speak to him, he's like, you got a problem. You got a problem? You ain't speak today? I needed stuff like that because I never had no stuff like that. I mean, I had to go to prison to get a father-like type of situation. I mean, somebody that I could respect, because there wasn't too many people around you could respect that's older than you in the streets. You know what I mean? So, I want to say congratulations to Chris too, because I know him. We actually, his block was the 2500 block, my block was the 2600 block. So we knew each other like our whole life. You know what I mean? So, and I know how hard it is, and nobody else really came from where we came, like made it. I mean, that's like with a positive thing, like something that's legal. You know what I mean? So like, it's a miracle just being alive, period.
Yeah.
But being successful or never being successful is like, that's almost like asking for too much where we from. You know what I mean? So I just want to tell kids that let them know that's possible to be anything. I don't care where you're from, what circumstances is, you can be anything, and really let them know that you really can. I'm not just saying this, you can really be anything, because we come from less than nothing. I don't know what it feel like to have a mother or a father or none of that type of stuff. You know what I mean? To buy you food and take you to the doctors, like the basic stuff that people take for granted, we didn't have. And I know we ain't have it because we just be together every day, and it wasn't just us two. It was like our whole neighborhood was like that. You know what I mean? Because I tell people all the time, drugs in the 80s was different from now. People that did drugs in the 80s couldn't function. You could tell they was dirty. You could tell as soon as you see them, they was on drugs. So our moms was like that. You know what I mean? Like them talking prostituting right down the street from where we hang at. You know what I mean? So like when I look at it, where we came from, it's like a miracle. Even though a lot of people don't know how much of a miracle it is, me and him know. You know what I mean? So my thing is, I just want to save the kids from feeling that pain that I felt. Basically, that's it.
Come on. Hey, well, Sino, we appreciate your time joining with us. Joby, I didn't know if you wanted to introduce yourself. He doesn't have a camera working right now.
Yep, absolutely, Chip. Thank you. And apologies to everyone that I got some activity going on in the background and I can't have my screen up right now. But again, I am Job Sender. I'm the chief of staff for Mel at One Day at a Time. I've been there for coming up on 6 years in June. 6 years ago when Mel and I's paths crossed, I had came to him with an idea for I in my free time I ride BMX bikes. So for anyone not familiar with that, think skateboarding, but on a 20-inch bicycle. Do that all over the city. And in my years doing that, I had tons of communication and conversations with youth. Seeing that this is a great tool to help kids kind of get involved in something and afford themselves some opportunities that they may not have had previously. I've traveled the world to ride bikes in different countries, Europe, South America, etc., all over the U.S. I looked at this as a means for kids to get involved in something, get off the street, and hopefully, have a hobby that can take them somewhere. Right now, I received a grant from ESPN and another organization to create a bike park in North Philly. So I'm working on this bike park for our youth at 15th and York. It's been about 3 years in the making, jumping through all sorts of hurdles and road bumps and everything, but we've gotten through, the toughest section with all that. And we're hoping to get construction started in the next few months this spring. Like I've said, I've done so much, met so many great people just through riding BMX bikes. And I feel that this is, a great tool and a great resource and outlet for, kids to get involved in it and see where it may take them. So, that's kind of my current piece right now with some of the community work that ODAAT's doing. This has been my baby, and I know Mel's very excited about it. So, just really looking forward to getting that out there, having this space for our kids where we can, dedicate a safe space for them to work on this type of, bike riding and hopefully, make it a lifelong, activity for them.
Come on, Joby. Well, Joby, it's always great to hear your voice. I've loved over
Can I say
years.
one thing? Not to cut you off.
Well, actually, I want to
congratulations
get
to the brother.
going with the rest of the questions, Rosino, unless it's something
Hey,
real.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Go
I
ahead,
just wanted to
Steve.
say one thing. I got a podcast, right? That I think we all do this on my podcast too. I got a lot of people watching, a lot of stuff like that. So,
Oh,
I mean, if
absolutely.
anybody want to do it, we could just get together on my podcast too. That's all I wanted to say.
No, absolutely. Hey, this is
Awesome.
a collective effort, right? There's no competition on this one. This one is for the betterment of ourselves and those that are around us. And the thing about this class of folks right now that's on this thing, we all come from a different background, and we all, in many ways, say, "Well, we made it out." Dan, my cousin, who's going to be sharing here in a little bit, I was up in New England for 30 years. Grew up here in Philadelphia. Actually, I was actually born on 18th and Cumberland. My cousins are still living there. And Gregory, you probably know my uncle Leroy. He's dead. Lois, Ken, Kenny, all them. I'm sure you know them. But my family, my dad took me out. He took me up to West Oak Lane. Grew up there. It got really crazy and out of control. My mom said, "No, I'm sending your hiney over to Jersey because you are going to go to college." And I was like, all right, whatever. Dad got a business. But we all came from a different route. And in New England, my cousin Dan would come up because he was working for IBM. They were sending him all over. And we would sit down. He'd take me out to lunch because, he was making it. And I was trying to figure it out. And we would talk, and we would always talk about, man, it's amazing when we look at our family and we see the different things. I look at my family. I think there's 10 or 12 who've been in and out of prison, some still in prison, drugs. I remember when I first came to ODAAT, my cousin was kicked out of ODAAT. I'm like, if ODAAT can't help you, you all done. I don't know what else I can do for you. But, God had a plan. And today, what we're going to try and do is I'm going to have Dan tell his story. Dan's story is a little different, but he came right out of Philly, and he made some choices and some things. But we want to talk today's conversation is about the poverty mindset. It's a lot of times we think, well, the poverty mindset ends when you got $1 million. No, because a lot of times you give somebody $1 million and they lose it all, and then they wind up owing $4 million. But that comes from a poverty mindset. That comes from a thinking. A lot of times people think you can't be a millionaire unless you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm here to tell you that's not true. And I think we've got to learn to educate not only ourselves collectively, but that next generation of coming up, how to get rid of the poverty mindset. And so I want to introduce Dan Somerville, and I wanted him to tell his story and kind of give us a great picture of where he came up, his age, some pivotal points in his life, and some of the things that he's learned during his journey, so that we can then discuss them together collectively and see how we can both glean from it for our own personal self, but also for the community at large that's around you. So I give you at this time my cousin, my brother, my big brother. Mel's my young brother. This is my big brother. So you got to have I'm sandwiched in between two individuals of greatness in the hopes that I can be just half of what they are. But I give you my brother, Dan. So Dan, why don't you go ahead and share your story?
First of all, I want to say hello to everyone. Thank you, Chip, for that, just that setup and those kind words. I appreciate that. You've always been my younger cousin that I've admired for the many things that you've achieved in your life and the young man that you are. It's really a pleasure for me to participate in this. It's a real humbling experience because I too am from North Philadelphia, grew up at 17th and Huntington, and actually grew up in foster care. I know that one of the participants was in the foster care system. I was very fortunate. A lot of the things that I've heard you guys talk about, the experiences that you have gone through, by the grace of God, I was able to avoid those things. I grew up was educated in the Philadelphia school system. After that, I had an opportunity to go to college. I went to Penn State University. I got a degree in business administration. And after graduating, I entered corporate America. The first couple of years, I worked in the banking industry. From there, most of my professional career in the corporate world was with Verizon. I was there for 14 years in various sales and marketing jobs. And then finally, the last 6 years of my professional career was with IBM. And that afforded me a lot of opportunities to travel, to see things, and to to just really learn about business. And it created a longing, a desire within me to pursue an entrepreneurial life. So after 22 years, I made the leap. I started a business, a home inspection business called Elite 3 Home Inspection. I ran that from 2007 through 2020. I just retired from that business. And I'll tell you a little bit about that, why I think this is really, falling in place. In addition to the home inspection business, I bought a janitorial business back in 2009. It was called Josie Janitorial Services. It's a neighbor of mine. He's still my neighbor. He sold me the business. And in 2011, I rebranded it under the same Elite 3 name. So I was running Elite 3 Home Inspection and Elite 3 Facilities Maintenance. I still operate that business. I have about 12 employees, and we provide services in the Montgomery County area, local government, higher education, not higher education, but educational facilities, as well as manufacturing operations. So that's where I'm at this season of my life. I got turned on to a book a couple of years ago called The Code of the Righteous Warrior. Dr. Alan Waller, who's my pastor, is the author of the book. And in that book, it talks about, for a man, 4 quarters. He uses a sports analogy. And I'm probably the senior one on this call, and utilizing that analogy, I'm probably late in the 3rd quarter or about to enter the 4th quarter. So what does that mean? The first quarter of your life, you're just kind of figuring things out. You're moving through life, your teen years, your early 20s. Then your second quarter, for those who have a business pursuit or whatever your career is, you're in that second quarter going into the 3rd quarter. Those ideally should be the years where you're establishing yourself, where you're starting a family, where you're building wealth. I took that trajectory. So now, in that latter part of that 3rd quarter, our focus should shift. It should be about, how do I reach back and help those who are coming up behind me? That's the season that I'm in within my life. And during this season, my commitment is to mentor young men. There's a couple of young professional men that I'm mentoring. And the focus of the mentoring effort is to really encourage them to develop a commitment to their faith, whatever their faith walk is. I know that we have some Christian brothers. I know that we have some Muslim brothers. Whatever your faith walk is, make that commitment. It creates a sense of stability, responsibility within your life. So our faith walk is critically important. The second thing is focusing on career success. Whatever your calling in life is, you want to be successful. And how do you be successful? Once again, you commit to discipline. You invest time, effort, and energy to better yourself. You read books. That's one of the challenges that a lot of people, especially African Americans, we don't read like we should. And that's something that will develop our minds, will expose us to new things. And then finally, the mentoring effort is to help young men, young people, to build wealth. My philosophy is, if you're making money, you can build wealth. Now, what does that look like? So often we are exposed to wealth building scenarios that are get rich quick. That's not my message. My message is slow and steady in multiple buckets. For me, it was about consistently investing from a young age, a small amount each week, each month, each year, utilizing tax advantage investment opportunities. In addition, the multiple bucket philosophy. My buckets were my corporate job, and even early in my corporate years, I remember my first job was in the management training program at First Pennsylvania Bank. So we were hired to be the future leaders of the bank. In my first year, I hooked up with another. We were the only two blacks in our training class. There were a class of 30. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. He was the top dog academically. I mean, this brother was sharp. His name was Joe Waits. And we started a little tax business. So we had our corporate jobs and our income from that, but we had that entrepreneurial spirit. So that was a secondary bucket for me. And I'll tell you a funny story. We ran our first, we prepared taxes. And at the end of the tax season, we took our profits and we went, because this was during the time when you wore suits to work. So we took our profits and we went to, there's a store, it was called, you guys may be too young to remember, Today's Man was the name of the store. So we went to Today's Man and bought new suits. So that's, that was the additional benefit that we derived from our business interests. But that sparked a flame within me to engage in business. So later, as I continued to work, I started investing in real estate. So that was another bucket. So once again, slow and steady, multiple buckets. Those are the key pieces of building wealth. In addition to that, the pillars, there's 3 pillars that I call out as wealth building components. One is really awareness. Know what you don't know. We have to get there. 2 is education, financial literacy, understanding finances, understanding compounding, understanding the importance of protecting our credit. If your credit is solid, the sky's the limit in terms of engaging in business, commerce, dealing relationships with banks. Those things are critically important. And so often, once again, it goes back to the awareness. Not having that awareness, those things are often compromised because we just don't know, and we need to know. And then finally, being savvy. I can just read the messages that I've heard, each one of you brothers, because you got that North Philly in you. You got that savvy in you. It's being able to utilize that skill set, that you possess, and now leverage it in another area of your life. And that's the mission to build wealth. When I often ask a question, what does money mean to you? And a lot of times you'll get a variety of answers. Well, it means I can, buy a car that shows that I'm balling or I'm a boss. Or it allows me to do just a variety of things. When someone asks me, what does money represent? To me, money represents freedom. It's a freedom that allows me to, by and large, live the life that I want to live. I'm a father of 3. I'm married. I've been married it'll be 31 years later this year. So we've had a very great life, my wife and me, along with my 3 children. My goal was to provide them with a college education. And my goal was to do that without them taking out loans. I had a goal. I was able to achieve that goal. So as a result, all 3 of my kids have graduated. They all went to Penn State, followed in my footsteps there, went to Penn State, much to my wife's chagrin. She's a Temple grad, so we give her beef a lot of times about that. But they were able to graduate. They're all working professionally, and they don't have that burden of student loans. All of those things make a difference. And it's really understanding the tools that are out there to build wealth, committing to the discipline that allows us to build, to compound the wealth, but then to also focus on how do we take steps to create generational wealth. I don't think we accomplish that when we, and I'll say to people, if you buy a $60,000 car, automobile, and you don't own a house, that's suboptimal. When I say suboptimal, suboptimal. That's another way of saying that's probably not a good decision. We want to invest our resources in things that are appreciating. Things like vehicles and toys and things like that, they depreciate. And it's really understanding, you know, the wealth building game. There's a book that I'll just kind of mention. Some of you may or may not have heard of this. It's called The Millionaire Next Door. And what it really does, it distinguishes the behavior of millionaires. So often, and social media is a major contributor to this. When we consume social media, what we get is this perfectly curated lifestyles of individuals. We see this stuff. It creates envy. It creates a desire. Oh my God, they're living so great. They're having so much fun. They have so much. But so often that's a false narrative. That's not the reality that people are experiencing. In the book, The Millionaire Next Door, it talks about people who live a simple life. For example, I drive a vehicle that's, I think it's 11, 12 years old now. But that's okay. It gets me to the destination that I need to be. I can buy in pretty much any car that I want to within reason, but that's not critically important to me. What was important to me was to be able to allow my kids to go to college and not incur the debt. Those were my priorities. We have to, and Chip talked about the poverty mindset or the mindset. We have to change our mindset. You know, chasing the false narratives that are presented by social media is not going to allow us to accomplish the objective, to build the wealth, to develop the independence. It's more than just financial independence. It's life independence. That should be the goal. That's the picture that we should want to present to our children and to our children's children. So that's the season that I'm in my life. I'm committed to try to help particularly my young brothers of color to understand, to, you know, show them some principles that they can follow to better their lives.
That's fantastic, Dan.
Thank you, guys.
Dan, I think, the thing that amazes me is that on this podcast or whatever we're calling this thing, you got people that been in prison, you got folks that didn't have fathers, and everybody had a different path to reach where you're at today, and that's fantastic. And honestly, that's just the start. That's just the start. That's just the beginning. And maybe what we could talk about, Dan, I mean, here you are, you grew up right there in 17th Street. At one point you were living with your high school buddy. What were some of the obstacles? Like if you're speaking to some of these young kids that maybe can't go to Penn State, but maybe they can, but what are some of those obstacles that you had to avoid or had to deal with that'll help them retrain their thinking? Because if I got somebody, I remember sitting out in front of your house right there on 17th Street, and I sat there for 2 hours, dude, on the corner selling drugs all day long. And I'm sitting there going, what am I supposed to think if I'm some young kid? I can't even go home. Ain't no mom and dad. And this guy got a bag of money sitting over here in a brown paper bag. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what about me?
Yeah, no, that's Chip, that's real. And that's why I will never throw a stone at someone who chooses that course, because we can be in a state of desperation, and desperation will force a man to do whatever he has to do to feed himself and his family. So I get that. My message is, and higher education isn't the message for everyone. I'll just tell you a quick story. Chip, I'll pick up on what you kind of set up there. When I was 16 years old, the house that we were living in, I was out of foster care for a very brief period of time and resettled with my biological mother. We lived up in Mount Airy. I don't know how she had this house, how she was even able to pull it together, but the bottom line is we had a fire. And because the mortgage wasn't up to date, there was no insurance, so we had to leave. And I was in a season of my life when I was just kind of out there, and I don't get into the specifics. I don't like to glorify the specifics of my wrongdoing, but some of the things that you guys have been involved with, I don't like to glorify the specifics of my wrongdoing, but some of the things that you guys have been involved with, some of the things that you guys have been involved with, I know what you're talking about. Been there, done some of that, you know, and I was very fortunate coming up. But for probably 3 months, and I'm still in high school, I was living with a buddy, him and his mom, who had no control over what we did. So we came and went as we pleased. That's not the formula for a path to success in our society, you know, because I'm doing things that if it had gone another way, my story could really line up with a lot of the stories that I've heard here. But for the grace of God, that was not what happened in my case. There was a turning point for me. You know, first of all, I have an older sister. Her and my brother-in-law, they came and just got me. They said, listen, the way you're living is unacceptable. We're going to just take you into our home. So they did. And that kind of helped me right my ship. I was in the 11th grade. I was so close to either being expelled or having to repeat the 11th grade. But them bringing me in sort of threw me a lifeline and allowed me to develop some stability, some discipline to kind of get back on track. But there was one day I was on the subway. They lived in Southwest Philadelphia, so I would take the subway to Broad and Snyder and take the bus from there. And I'll never forget it. It was June of the year this must have been 78, 79. And I remember seeing the graduates from Southern High School, South Philly High, had their caps and gowns. It was that vision that I experienced at that moment that said, hey, I want that for myself. And that, just seeing those students, I didn't even engage in conversation or anything, but just that sight inspired me. I went on to my senior year. I got back on the straight and narrow. I was able to finish up strong, which allowed me to get into college. So that was my path, college. College isn't for everyone. One of the things that I think is so critically important is we need to expose our young men to the trades. There are opportunities in the trades. There's opportunity for people to get higher education. There are opportunity for our young men who are gifted artists, like Osina, you know, who have those talents and skills. You know, there's no singular path. That's something that we should accept and embrace. So often we hear, you don't get an education, you can't be anything. It's what type of education you get. Are you going to be the master of whatever industry? Are you going to be a master tradesman? Are you going to be a top-notch artist? Whatever it is you do, it's a commitment to be your best. And that's something we can all do. We can make a commitment within ourselves to be our best, because that involves discipline. It involves a commitment of time, effort, and energy. So if we can do those things, that's the best advice that I would give to someone. College was the path for me. There are other paths that we can take. It's just a matter of making that commitment.
Well, one of the things I thought we could chat about is just if we can all chime in, what do you think are some of the obstacles that prevent that next generation and even folks in our own generation from getting out of that poverty mindset, both in thinking and materialistically?
I'm gonna go. I just want to go first because to help it, I know we're running out of time and we're going to do a follow-up series, but this is a platform to actually help a system that's broken. We're creating our own system here, y'all, right? And as I look at the screen, I can see everybody who does work in the community. And that's all good. And so I just wanted to highlight that I see Oskino is doing some artwork, because people are listening and saying, well, what are they doing? They just talking. No, we're actually doing it. And I see Oskino here who does paint work with the youth at One Day at a Time. I see Chris Kennedy here who does marketing along with One Day at a Time. I see John who's out there in the community who's making something happen. Then I see even Darnell here who actually runs the same day pay program. So people who are listening in, I want to let you know that help is here. we're not talking about it, that we're being about it. And even for our series next week, I believe we're going to bring in the manager from the Eagles, Norman, my big brother, also my big bro from Wall Street. Whoever you thought would bring Wall Street to the hood. We're going to bring Wall Street to the hood so we all can learn well. Please continue on, Chip.
Yeah. So what do you think? We got a few 10 minutes or so here. When you think of the obstacles
excuse me, folks. Can I just rightfully eject, man? Because if I don't eject, it's not gonna sit right with my soul. So what I'm seeing here is just going by the facts. On the top screen, between Dan, you have a beautiful story. Beautiful that you came out that way. So it's a good ending. Chip, I just don't. I'm just trying to figure out like what's your background, because you said you left for 30 years. And when we talking about in terms of the community and starting at a goal point, I just want to know, what do you know what's going on about in Philadelphia, like you personally?
So that's a good question. That's a great question. I can answer that.
Because here's my thing. You have beautiful oratory. I love the way you're moderating the room. But in my travels, when I'm looking at what I'm representing now, from Mr. Muhammad all the way to the young brother John Solomon, it's about somewhere along this path, Mel. These guys are going to need to have voices that they can firmly connect to.
Oh, that's why you here, Chris. What I want to understand, I'm gonna let Chip. Let me finish this, Chris, for you right here. Is that? Let me say this. Let me finish this, Chris, for you right here, bro. Let me finish this for you. That's the goal. That's the goal, right? Because some places, me and you go, Chris, we have an aura about us that we can carry ourselves to people who don't even believe where we come from. And so I brought here to help moderate because, like you said, somebody, I think Dan said, is that we have skills to be versatile. And that's why we all coming together to actually have people like a Chip Mitchell, like a Dan, like a Gregory Muhammad. And most of all, what this platform is really for is you. It's for us to bring you in the room, because that's what I'm saying. I go in a lot of rooms, but how can I go in a lot of rooms and not allow y'all in the room? That's the problem. And that's why I said, let me create my own room and we can have representatives like Chip all the way to you to make sure that we talking all facets of life, so nobody no more can tell us no. So that's the goal.
Can I say something? I kind of know what Chris mean, right? But Chris, this is how I look at it, Chris. I think like Daniel and Chip, I think they speaking to us, telling us how to be, so we can take it to the next generation down. You know what I mean? Like, of course,
I agree with you. Oh, I agree with you. But the reality is this.
I mean, I appreciate them. Y'all give me your time, because if you got your bread already, you can don't care. You know what I mean? You can just go home and don't care about nothing.
Pretty much.
You trying to talk to us, and I appreciate it. But I know Chris trying to say, but I think Chris, with Chip and Daniel saying, I think could come to us, because I would really like to carry myself how they carry themselves. But I got a lot of street in me. You know what I mean? So I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to
respectfully.
Oh, I mean, so I can get some stuff from them. Respectfully, take it to the young boys, because they're gonna listen to us, because they already know we've been through the stuff that they going through now.
Respectfully, I respect where you're coming from, bro, and I believe. Listen to Daniel, or listen to his story. Yes, we can take some of his business acumen. I probably disagree with him a little bit on the social media things, because it's different course to wealth now. Me and you have already proven that. You know what I mean? The way you can generate wealth in those streams is totally different from somebody from your era, Dan. Now, but what I'm saying is, by me doing time for that mistaken identity, for me doing 20 years, I look at myself in the middle between everything you and the young brother went through, Scott and Mr. Muhammad up here. I understand the story. I know how to articulate myself in these rooms. And oftentimes when I'm coming to see is, okay, Jay-Z brought you in the game. Master P brought me in the game. That's wealth beyond our years. People would never will even imagine get close to. But oftentimes when I'm finding is from us, from our generation, the leaders that's a little that's in tune with the knowledge, because there's a lot of information that's been hidden from us from years. Lots of information, and it's from the political lead, the representatives from the ground level. That's from our community. That's a little above us, and it's the guys like the Jay-Z's and the P's. So I find myself in the middle. Oftentimes I don't say anything. Right? Because I feel like I understand the game. Okay, Senator Sharif just came in here. He dropped some information about people wanting to, with the COVID, and they want to get some people, help some people and get it together. But rightfully, he don't have a lot of people in the city pushing that narrative and pushing that message as far as our community.
But you know what you gotta do though? You gotta take some. Anytime somebody's trying to help any type of way, because nobody perfect. You gotta take everything somebody do and look at the good in it. You know what I mean?
Let me say this before Chip go on. Before Chip go on, let me say this, Chip, real quick. I know you're gonna answer this question, but I want to say this, right? And I know Gregory know this. I know everybody on the screen know this, right? A lot of times when we get the opportunity to be in the room, we kind of, burn the bridge down from being in the room. What I want to make sure that we do here is come together and back each other up. A lot of us go to a lot of meetings that people walk out and they start to backstab each other. But what I want to make sure that here that we create a positive platform to where everybody's going to back each other up. I'm bringing the senator in. How many times you see the senator go on the platform? Now that means he's going to be on this platform. He's going to make a commitment to this platform. Same way Gregory going to make a commitment to this platform. So I just wanted to make sure that we understand that we coming together to actually do what everybody's talking about so we could be about. Go ahead, Chip.
No, that's great. Hey, Chris, listen, man, I don't take no objection to your question about the validity of my being able to help and why am I here and what do I bring to the table. My family is all from Philly. I grew up here until 1985 and then I went to New England. I'm 55 this year and I came back. Well, why did I come back? Because it was very fortunate to me to be around people that changed my whole mental thinking. Because growing up here in Philly, there's a mindset, there's a thinking, there's a thing that's detrimental to our overall growth, what I would call that poverty mentality. And so spending 30 years out in New England, it did something to me. And I remember at one point in my life, I was thinking, wow, if only my family, literally my blood family, knew what I had been exposed to, we'd be in a different spot. And so coming back in 2015, one of my great ambitions was I want to give people access to what I've had access to so they can change the course of their life. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, Dan Somerville, this is my cousin. I called Dan. I said, Dan, you got to come on this thing, man. You got to share your story. He's like, yeah, talk to a guy who works on Wall Street every day. This brother works on Wall Street. You've seen him interview folks that are on CNN. He deals with the NFL and the NBA. He works for all of these guys, their money and how to retire and how to do well. I said, hey, man, I need you to come into North Philly and talk to these brothers to help, encourage, and help the youth. He said, count on it. I got another guy, the guy that runs Game Day Affairs, executive director of the Eagles, 4,000 employees that work under him. I've had him down at ODAAT. I said, no, you need to come down here and you need to get people to be exposed to what we have not seen. Because in North Philly or in West Oak Lane, I'm playing chinks, if you remember that game, or pitching pennies on the corner or hanging out saying, this next car is mine or yours, but not knowing how to get any of that. I got another guy. This guy ran one of the largest hedge funds. He decided to go out and buy over 3,000 houses at one time in Ohio. He bought 3,000 houses at one time. He bought them cash, paid them all off. Then he rented them, and then he said, you know what I'm going to do, Chip? I'm going to set up a rental agency. He set up a rental agency, and then you know what he did? He waited till the housing crisis ended, and then you know what he did? He sold them all at once. Well, he's also willing to come down and talk. See, we don't have these people. I got another guy that's worth $500 million in New England. That's a dear friend of mine that lets me go to his house in Nantucket and hang out for free. He's willing to come and talk and share the knowledge that our community flat ain't never had. And the first time we get money, you see us on the NFL. Go look at 30 for 30. What happens to that money? Whether it's 10 million or 50 million, most of the time it's all gone. Why? Because we don't have access to the knowledge. Let me say this. So I ain't got no crime or any with what you're saying. Nor am I sitting here to say I got some lengthy life that's detestable and I made it out. What I'm saying is, hey, I bring something to the table that I want to give access to my community that I know they can benefit from.
Right. That's what it's about.
Let me just say
18
this.
of my family members died.
Let me just add this to be clear, and I'm gonna just let you brothers take the floor. See, this the thing, right? When you've been in this space, I've been in this space since for the last almost 20 years. I've been in these meetings. What I'm just basically saying, and I guess hopefully if somebody feel me, yeah. If not, then I understand. When you've been in these when you've been in these spaces, where you get a few of the community guys, and you get some of the guys with the the financial literacy backgrounds and things like that. Oftentimes, there's no fruition to these things we talked about. And
Well, no, well, Chris, let me say this. Let me say this. Hold on, Chris. Let me say this. Right now, I got 40 kids in Kensington that are in the worst situations you can possibly be in. I've got mentors across the United States, one-on-one mentors for each of those kids. I got job training for those kids. I got certification for those kids. So I hear you. But I'm just trying to tell you, I'm here to do something.
This is the platform that we gonna have when what the brother said about somebody not biting their back out, and if it means if it means a person a voice that allows them to get kicked out of the room, then that is the psychological mind frame that we had to break. We got to be all heard and understood. All I was asking from a young man who's seen, I done seen the depths of my face. I watched First Cousins. Would die in my face. I done stood at these guys' funeral. I didn't talk this talk, bro. I wasn't questioning what you bring us. I was just trying to get familiar with who you are. I know who Sharif is.
You know he is, Chris, because I've been talking to you about him for the last few months.
Yeah, so I want both to look at it. This is how I want you brothers to look at it.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. I'm cool with it. It didn't sound like
this what we gonna do.
It sounded like you were testing the authenticity of why I'm here. You know what I'm saying? I hear you. It didn't sound that way. But I got a list of things that I'm involved in if you want to talk about this.
If it sounded that way, Chip, I apologize. But let me tell you what
I'm with you. Hey, don't let this smooth vernacular forget that I am from Philly. I'm down with it. I got everybody for all night long, man. This is what I enjoy. You know what I'm saying?
Hey guys, let's go on because we short for time. Listen. We're gonna squabble, we're gonna hang out. Listen though, Chris, and I'm gonna let you go, Chris. It's just that we have the senator here.
Hey Chris, we can get our own Zoom,
I want to get back on track. Let's get back on track so we can wrap up, yo.
All right, we're gonna let you. This is what I'm saying, Chip. This what you gotta look at it for me for what my stance is, right? In this room, I know in this room physically, I mean from me and Elskino got a lot of influence just to get to our people every day. We have a lot of influence on a lot of people from the penitentiary all the way to the people that's on the street. All I'm saying is just this: I'm your little brother at the end of the day. So you gotta look at it from the little brother that's trying to protect the piece of the community and make sure people ain't just coming and exploit their community.
That's it. That's what we want.
Look, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, if this is what Mel is bringing us to, because that's who connect us to, I know it's been good. I designed that logo 18 years ago. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm in the right space.
That's right, bro. That's all good.
All I was doing.
Mel, can I say something?
Good. Yeah, Chip's still running it. I want y'all to stay on track. Y'all can talk as family, but we want to be mindful that listen though, because we want to be mindful that somebody's listening in to try to take away negativity from this. And what y'all see here is a family conversation on where we're not going to get tired of trying to figure out how to help our people. And everybody in this room is bringing services to the community. I'm going to pass it back to Chip and Gregory so we can go ahead and end out as a family and put real actions to the streets and follow up. Let's go.
I wanted to just say to Brother Chris that I understand what you're saying, brother, and you're right on point. And I want to share this. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that our youth are for war and the elders are for counsel. Your influence is great and needed. We have experience for the years that we've been on this planet. I'm 63 years old. Most of my life was incarcerated. So I couldn't get where you was at. I didn't have a chance to go in prison, come home, and go back. I was railroaded. I was mistreated. I was sentenced by a racist judge. So I never got a chance to come back on the street. I was 19 years old, 1 month before my 20th birthday. So I had to deal with the streets in prison. of what you were going through in the street. When the young brothers come through, I did all I could to reach them. And a lot of those young brothers are adults today that are out here and will bear witness to the fact that we've done all we could in the 80s to save our youth. I love what you're saying, Brother Chris, Brother O, and all of the young brothers that you know, okay? And we got to push your agenda to save our youth, to save our community. We out with the final call, and we talk to the youth on the corners. We, doing business, and we know because we come from the same mud. All right, so you on point, and we are family. We all working together, brother, and we gonna get the job done. Thank you.
I gotta be honest. Ain't no young folks gonna listen to me. Why? Because I'm corny as all get out. I'm corny. I've been wearing the same jeans for 15, 20 years. I ain't got, but I got some stuff up here that I know doggone well is going to change the course of lives of some of these people because I've seen it. But I know when you speak or Osino speaks, it's funny. I was watching a lot of Osino's YouTube videos and Wallow and just hearing your story, and it's inspiring. As soon as my daughter comes, she's 18, she's glued to what I'm watching. When I'm talking the same stuff, she don't want to hear it. She could care less. Why? Because I'm corny.
Dan said it best. It's like a football team, man. Everybody's playing their part. I just feel like thanks again to Mel Wells, because I see what the whole setup it is, man, because it's really like you guys are coming along to teach man Oskino, and you pass some of these jewels along so we can run an effective game plan and break some of these psychological mind frames that we in that's disfranchised as a community. It's like
absolutely
said, the things that he was fighting for and advocating for, he should be able to share that information through the people who got the most strength on the community, and it can be like a protocol. Look,
well, and here's the other side, Chris. I want to be clear. Myself or Dan, we're not bringing something that's above where you may be. We're not coming here as if, we're high and mighty. No, we're coming with a piece of the puzzle. That's all we got. We each bring the piece of the puzzle. I grew up with my father. My father was my hero. Most folks I deal with and mentor and help, they don't know who their father is. They have no idea. I grew up with a loving father that kissed me on my lips, probably to this day if he was still alive. I had my mother in the house. I mean, now their marriage was terrible. I ain't gonna lie about that. But my father took care of me. My father provided for me. I never had to worry about being loved or cared for. But most people don't have that. But that doesn't shun what I can bring, because I mentor a number of men that have sons that never had a father. So they don't know how to be a father. They don't know how to be endearing. They don't know that. And so I get a chance to do that. But that doesn't put me or Dan or anybody above anybody. It's just that piece of the puzzle. Because go ahead, Dan.
I just want to offer one thing, and this is a principle that I embrace, learned back in my corporate days. There's a principle that you can't boil the ocean. And what that means is the ocean is too vast. We're going to walk into these type of situations, Chris and others, where you sit through these meetings and it's like, are we getting anything done? I get that. I understand that frustration. But that principle of boiling the ocean, I recognize that's not real. If I can connect with one person, here's my message, and say, hey, what you said makes sense. Can you teach me, or can you show me how to be able to build wealth, how to be able to build a successful career? Then mission's accomplished. You're not going to get the whole game. It just don't work out.
So I think all of us have different perspectives and talents. Certainly, Chris, brother Osino, I think one of the things that I bring here, in addition to being an elected official, I spent some time in corporate America. I was a corporate attorney for years. Now, during that time, I was still living in North Philly, and as a corporate attorney, we're still running to the jail in the police station in the middle of the night as my friends got locked up and whatever. I was living in North Philly when I was in law school. right down the street. I will say the perspective of having left for a brief 4 years to go to Atlanta and see Black wealth like I didn't know imagined was helpful. But when I came back and I was doing the corporate thing during the daytime, at night I still came back home to my hood. And there are not a lot of people who are living in the hood who are also living a corporate life. So I did that for a minute. What I will tell you is there's a lot of things that we can benefit from there. And I will tell you that I know that you can, that we can impact folks. The other thing is, though, there needs to be a recognition of the reality of how you communicate that information. And some of the edge that I found what you want to do is take what you can benefit from in terms of understanding the game, but know that there were always advantages because I had an edge to me because I came home to the hood at night that sometimes gave me an advantage in a corporate setting that other people didn't have. And my father had been an attorney who was raising a son in the hood, where we sat on my steps when I was like 12, 13 years old and watched during the late 80s, 60 people go by in a minute to a crack house down the street. Right, that was my childhood, where men and women were sticking behind the house on Carlisle Street. So but at the same time, he was a lawyer and a councilman. We recognize that there are a lot of different experiences you have, and what I would say to and I said this at Reverend Wells' homegoing, because a lot of people look at what happens to us and we say, well, what's my role in all this? You know, if you get bitten by a snake, right? The only way you can cure a snake bite is to find a snake like that, just find that same snake, because the only thing you can make the anti-venom from is the venom of that snake. And so those of us who've been out there and seen the problems and experienced the problem understand that the same God that exposed us to the problem exposes us to the solution. Because when he places the problems in you, he places the solutions in you. So yeah, we need you because you have the tools to communicate to people that need to be communicated to. And I would say this, everybody has a role. And so if you know about how hurricanes start, there's just a small breeze that leaves the shores of Africa. And as it travels across the global, the ocean currents, a lot of times by the time it reaches the Atlantic on our side or the Caribbean, that wind has built up so much energy, it's a hurricane.
Let's go.
And so some of what we're doing today is like that breeze coming off the coast of Africa, that by the time it reaches the people we need to, it is a hurricane. So while you may not, Brother Dan or Brother Chip, be able to beat a hurricane by yourself, you can plant the seed you can be the breath in these brothers' ears. And maybe Brother Chris, Brother Oshino, Mel, some of these young brothers that are on this call, they can be the energy of the ocean that creates the hurricane that can change everything. Because I will tell you, I've seen things happen in massive change a long time. And I'll tell you, as a guy who grew up in the neighborhood and watched that when the police were breaking into our house during the Rizzo era, when the police have to salute my father when he became the mayor, the same cops who were breaking into our house, blew up my uncle's office when he had the same set of job I had. He had to then respect us because we changed the situation and changed the game in Philly. Now, that doesn't mean everything is perfect. The reality is that most of the money isn't with the government. It's with the private sector. It's the things that Chip and Dan are telling you about. All the people always say, well, how I get at that government dollars? The reality is most of the government only has a small portion of the dollars. Government regulates the game. Government's like the referee of a basketball game, not even a contestant. If you want to get in the game, you got to look at the stuff that Chip and Dan are telling you. And a lot of our folks, we're trying to figure out how to be the referee, but we don't understand how to play the game. What Chip and Dan are trying to tell you is how to actually be in the economic game of this country. Because in a capitalist country, if you're not figuring out how to be in the economic part of the game, you ain't in it at all. And I will conclude with this part of the remarks with this. Many scholars have said that if you're not at the table in a capitalist society, you're on the menu. So it's time we stop being and start being players in the game. And yes, we need fair referees. That's why we got to have elected officials that keep it fair. But elected officials are basically just referees, right? We make the game fair. We make sure that people ain't jacking us up. And for people who've been discriminated against and ain't had a chance to play the game fair, not one time yet, getting fair referees matters. but that doesn't change the fact that we still have to play the game and play it to win. So you hear stories like learning how to buy when the market's cheap and sell when it's high. Like Chip was saying, there's some wisdom there that could benefit, particularly in a time right now with COVID where everything is dropping. A lot of prices are dropping. A lot of people gonna make money off of it. Some of them need to come from our communities. Those are there are nuggets of wisdom that can be there. And what I'm telling you is, I think the best role I can provide in this is having lived a dual experience my whole life, where I would spend half my time in the corporate sector and half my time back in the hood. And it was never, and I wasn't away that long. I was, even now, I'm sitting here doing a corporate thing on Zooms with senators and all, sitting on Susquehanna Avenue at my political office.
I want to conclude for you.
I think it's important that we connect it all together. And brother Chris, you know what? That energy, that fire, you can't let nobody take that away from you, because that's the edge that you'll have.
We need it.
I want to say, man, for me and Oskino, I definitely want to say, I was just sitting here. Dan and Chip, man, I greatly appreciate you guys, man. And I was thinking about, man, is a reason why me and him got where we was at. I think God always had his hands on us, because literally all our friends are gone. You know what I'm saying? Wow. And we young, early 40s, like all our friends are gone. And that's from a literal figure. Probably got a few sprinkles left. And I just want to tell you guys, like, I really appreciate y'all. And I'm going to tell you real quickly, I've been living in the last 5.5 years. Everybody on my block, around my block, down my street, up my street, on top of the street, all of them is in Millionaire properties. So I'm telling you, from having that Chip for you, when you was telling me you left for 30 years, I've been over here 5 years, literally living. I used to come over here on state parole and tell them to kiss my ass, excuse me, guys, and just chase my dream. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I used to come over here and stay parole. I knew I'd get in trouble but it was for a crime I ain't commit. So I like, hell, I'm going to chase my dreams. But it was times I got out the car when I was driving Lyft. I mean, blessed not to have to do it for the last 3 years. I had to got some films out. But I'm going to tell you, it's times I got out the car and I got out that car and cried on mountains over one reason. And it's the same reason why I only cried in jail. I sat back and realized how much they got us. In jail was more so from the brothers like going to war with each other, but it's a bigger war we don't see. So I couldn't go back to jail. And
so look, let me do this for the sake of time, Chris and everybody. What I wanted to do was create our own room, so other political figures can come in and give us the help we need, not to listen just to me or Chip or Gregory or Dan, but to make you the leaders. Because what would have happened, Sharif, you know this, Sharif, if this was the typical corporate meeting, they would have canceled the next series. So what we're here to do is say to you that we're committed and we're going to keep on having these meetings and these sessions. And Chris, I thank you for yesterday. Chris already started doing his own outreach. A lady didn't have no heat in the house. Chris called over here to Philly. He now has heat going into that young lady's house and heat going into her car. So this is what this platform is about. It's not talking about it, but it's being about it and letting the voices be heard of, like, Sharif was talking about the snake, but letting the voices be heard of the true ambassadors, right? This is not about City Hall, going down City Hall and faking it like, oh, Mel Wells gonna speak for itself. That's a lie. I can't do all that. It takes all of us to go in the room, and I'm telling you, Chris, I'm committed to my squad. I will kick down the door to make sure all of us get in the room. Chip, however you want to wrap up, I want to be able to wrap it up, and I want to be able to put this out here too. Family, spread the word, spread the word. We're going to bring Wall Street to you next week to tell you how to flip that money and to do the right thing so we can level up and help more people come up out of poverty.
Yeah, well, one, I want to say thank you to everyone. And I think the thing is magnificent about this is, the 8 squares up here, everybody brings a different view. And we live in a culture right now that is polarized on views and not willing to accept that there are other perspectives, and realizing that our collective effort is the best thing could ever happen to our communities and ourselves, is understanding how we can work together and incorporate what we see and what the talents and the blessings that we've received in life, how we can give back and help. And I think valuing each person's perspective is everything. And I think that there are certain things that someone else can do that the other person can't. There's certain insights that somebody can have and the other person can't. But what we're going to try and do through this 3-week series is just generate thought, get our minds churning, getting a better understanding of who each person is so that we can have each other's back. And then quite frankly, through what Mel has, he's like the spider web that reaches all facets. And through that, we'll be able to find different projects and opportunities where we can get involved and help. And I think in that, I think God will reveal what is good and what is right that we can really, stake a claim in and help. And it may be 3 or 4 different projects, or it may be one. But what I do know is it's going to open the door of opportunity, and people are going to gain access to conversations, thinking that they've never had access to. I remember, my buddy that bought the over 3,000 houses. My first place I bought in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I didn't have any money. I had nothing. I had a 401k that had maybe $20,000 in it, and I was like, how am I going to buy a house? And he's like, oh, you can buy. I said, I can't. I ain't got no money. He said, call your family. Like, family? What are you, crazy? Do you not see me going down to court every other month to see if I can testify for my cousins in Philly? And he says, well, no, you can get it. I said, dude, there's no way. Nobody's. And, this white dude said, let me show you. Here, you go talk to this accountant. You go talk to this dude, and we're going to get you a house. And finally, they got me the approval to buy no money down on a $315,000 condo that was 1,700 square feet. It was the ugliest condo in the neighborhood, the absolute ugliest. And this dude said, look, this is the one you need to buy. I said, I ain't got no money. He said, no, you're going to do 0 down. So I do 0 down. He said, now here's what you're going to do. You're going to do a 6-month mortgage. And then in 6 months, you're going to redo this mortgage. And you're going to take cash out, and you're going to fix this thing up. And then you're going to put on a 30-year fix. And I was like, how am I going to do that? He says, don't worry. In this market, you got the ugliest house in the best neighborhood, and it's going to rise in 6 months. Watch. Sure enough, I buy this thing, no money down. I go to the owner. The owner said, well, you got to give me some earnest money. I said, earnest money? What, $1,000? He said, no, like 18 grand. I go, I'm buying it 0 down for a good reason. I ain't got no money. He's like, well, how do I know you're going to run off? I said, look, dude, this is the first house I've ever bought. I ain't going nowhere. My rich white friend, I said, look, I ain't got no money. He said, well, here's what I'll do. I'll give you some earnest money, but you got to sign a contract. I said, a contract? You're my friend. He said, listen, I want to stay your friend. If we put this stuff in writing and you violate it, then you just have subject to the contract. And in the contract, he had interest, 30 days. He wanted 2% interest over the course of 30 days. I was like, dude, he goes, this is how you do business. He said, now listen, if you don't give me my money back, we're still cool as friends, but you'll never have the opportunity to ask me for money again. And it's in the contract. I was like, do you know how many family members I would still be family with if I had done something like that? Because they want to lie. I signed it. I got the money. I gave it right back to him once we bought the house. 6 months later, the house jumped another $80,000. I was like, what? He said, now refinance the place, refinanced it. He said, now leave it alone. Don't mess with that money. Leave it alone. He said, you're going to get credit card offers. You're going to get loan offers. He said, leave it alone. I left it alone for 12 years. That house went from $300,000 to $612,000. I didn't believe it was worth $612,000. I put it on the market for $550,000. Somebody came to me and said, I'll give you $612 cash right now, and I won't even look at the house. I was like, what? I ain't never had that kind of money. And so what did I do? I moved to Philly. I bought a house in Drexel Hill, and I took the excess and went out and bought a Corvette. No, I took the excess. He said, go buy a place in South Jersey in Marlton. Get the smallest, ugliest house you can get in the best neighborhood. I bought it, paid that. I went in there cash, black man, with my mama. Gave him a check, cash. Now here it is, 4 years later, that house has doubled.
Yeah, that goes back to those 3 pillars.
The 3 pillars. The 3 pillars.
Education, savvy.
I ain't made more than $85,000.
Well, look, listen here, guys. Listen here. Dan, I want to just thank you.
We're going to close. We're going to close.
No, hold on, Chip. I got you. Go ahead, Chip. I'm going to let you close out. But my point is that for our community who is listening in, who might listen up later and say, oh, this is just another meeting. This is not just another meeting. We have ambassadors sitting up here. What I want to be able to do going into March 1st, I have Chris working with me. I have Ospino working with me. We will have them reach out to family members that need help with their gas, their electric bills, and both of them guys will be able to give up at least $1,000, being able to help out people with their bills. So we ain't just going to talk about it. We're going to be about it here because a lot of this stuff keeps people in the poverty mindset, and that's why they go out and create crime. We have Darnell here. If anybody's looking for a same-day pay job, instead of you going out committing a crime for $5, this guy will hire you for a day and he will pay you $100, right? And he came through the same-day pay program himself, and now is a graduate of the same-day pay program. And I think he got like 15 employees under himself. You got my man here, Gregory Muhammad. Gregory Muhammad, he's coming up with something big for the Muslim community. I think we have Savior's Day. Savior's Day that's coming up too. Listen, we coming at you is just a love group trying to bring love to our community. And how can I not, say about the Senator, we thank you because this is not a fundraiser. And I want everybody to know this. This is not no fundraiser. Right. Because typically right now in this season, politicians are only showing up to people who are cutting checks or taking pictures, giving away something. He came here to listen in and to be able to break down some wisdom to us and let us know that he does support us. And the senator know, once we get through the next 2 or 3 rounds, I will be going back at him to say, listen, now we need some money for the community so these ambassadors can go out here and show off more. His name ain't Senator Street for nothing because he's going to allow you to take care of the streets. So I'm going to let Chip wrap up, but I want the community to know this was not about me. This was not, hold up, Chris. This was not about me at all. This was all about our leaders here, people like Darnell, Chris, and O, to go out and do what they need to do. We let you finish up, Chris, and wrap it up. Chip,
I was saying, I remember hanging with you about 10 years ago. You took me. I didn't know I would end up watching Sharif fight for calls down City Hall, and I sat back because you know me. If they gonna squash this, our representative need to see us have some pushback against some of you guys that's a little more educated, savvy in certain areas. But I have, and I got the pictures to prove it. I have hanging with Mel one day. It led me so many places. I said, "Oh, this dude I don't like how this feel, Mel. You a celebrity going on with this community thing." And I watched you fight, Sharif, because had I not seen
he fight.
Had I not seen a fight in you, bro, you'd have heard from me like, no, man. But I promise you and everything, Reef. He showed. I seen you. I've seen you in action. Never got to really meet your father, but I've seen you in action. So when you got that information like that, we need more transparency. Also, my man, D. Scott, man, that's just it's a nick of time to get that first day hired, man. We need to be transparent with the information. That's all, fellas.
Well, hey guys, this has been a great one. Next week we're gonna hit another topic. We're gonna be talking more. But
Andres wanted to say something. He wanted to say something, Chip. Darnell, you want to say something real quick? We'll Chip end out.
Oh, I'm sorry. My
I
apologies.
definitely want to get the information up for the same day pay because, like I say, that definitely changed your life because the person could feed his child for the day. He might not sell no drugs or pick a gun up. So
Yeah.
Get it through Mel, D. Scott. Get it through Mel.
We got it. No, we already have it on. I got you, Chris. We working together. I got you. Go ahead, Chip, brother.
Well, guys, we're gonna use this platform to gel thoughts and ideas and get a sense of what each other feels and what each other brings to the table, and then we're gonna actually get our hands dirty. And there's many opportunities to serve, and we'll figure out what's that niche for you. And some of that niche may just be imparting input, knowledge, and so forth. Others actually hand in hand mentoring or getting our hands dirty. Either way, I think this is a great beginning. And I want to thank everyone for participating. We'll be back, I'm assuming, the same time next go around, Mel. Is that correct? So we'll do the same time next week. Guys,
Rachel's going to send everybody a follow-up email on all the work, precise. I'm not just coming here to talk, but the work that's being done right after this. So you will get a follow-up email first thing in the morning, especially Chris, and so we can get this out to the hood.
All right. Thank you.
Love y'all. Peace.
Thank you.
peace out. All right, peace out, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Peace.